Okay, this time I actually am going to keep it short. As you're probably aware, Vulture has released its own independent reporting on the allegations of sexual coercion and assault that have been leveled against beloved fantasy author Neil Gaiman. This is the first major outlet to conduct its own investigation since the initial story broke in the middle of last year, kicked off by a podcast series from Tortoise Media. I covered those podcasts in 2 videos, totaling nearly 4 hours worth of breakdown and analysis. A big part of why I did that was that right off the bat I had questions about the specifics, which I had hoped actually listening to the podcasts would answer. Instead, what I found from those podcasts were credible accounts from women about their experiences with Gaiman being relayed in a sleazy, true crime manner that may have conducted a decent investigation, but was reported in a way that I found at best deeply flawed and distasteful. Right from that first video, I said that part of the reason I made it was because for all the discourse I was seeing, few people seemed to be listening to the source, and I was tired of waiting for a more reliable outlet to do its own work and corroborate. It took longer than I thought, but Vulture, which is part of New York Magazine, is that more reliable outlet, speaking with many of the women that Tortoise spoke with and uncovering even more accounts from even more women, and then enabling them to share their stories. I'm not going to break this new article down and analyze it the way that I did with the podcast because, frankly, I don't need to. It very much speaks for itself. Gaiman has finally issued a statement of his own, which he has not done up to this point, and it is in line with the statements provided by his lawyers to Tortoise Media and essentially amounts to a claim that everything was consensual and nothing that happened was ever abusive or unwanted. He may or may not believe that sincerely, but for my purposes, whether or not he does is irrelevant at this point. I said at the end of the second video that I didn't have any intention of making a follow-up, and I actually stated a few places even after the Vulture article broke that I still didn't intend to, even as new allegations came out. And it was because after I did that second video, I didn't expect anything to substantively change my conclusions that I had at that point. Those conclusions, at the time of the second video, being that Gaiman was, at best, skirting nearly all the best practices of consent and going out of his way to remain intentionally and willfully ignorant of the harm he was causing, and, at worst, actively seeking out abusable power dynamics so that he could conduct himself however he liked with little fear of pushback or resistance. That best case scenario now appears wildly unrealistic. And the worst, and at this point very likely accurate, case scenario is that he didn't just seek situations where he'd get little resistance, but when he did encounter resistance, even in those situations, he went out of his way to override and push past it. I will not give explicit details here, as it's all very, very well covered by the Vulture article. I'm speaking on this now because I felt a discomfort at the idea that I had 2 extremely long videos which were partially criticisms of the reporting, and that I would have nothing following the far better presented reporting from Vulture. It was disquieting to me that the appearance would be that I criticized the first outlet and then was silent about a more reliable one. While I stand by every single word of criticism I ever said about those podcasts and Tortoise Media in general, I did also see the discourse. And I did see that people would bring up the sketchy nature of those podcasts as a reason to hold on to some hope about who Gaiman was and is, and they'd hold on to that hope rather than process the allegations fully. And as a result, while I personally was in no way surprised by the new reporting, though I was unsettled, I am seeing so many people appearing to process it properly for what looks to be the first time. New eyes are on this topic, and I don't wish for my only words to be about how badly Tortoise Media presented its initial findings. So this video will stand as my final statement that I believe these women, and while I question the integrity of Tortoise Media, and I stand by that questioning, I have never questioned the accounts the victims gave, and I do not question the integrity of the Vulture article. I'm going to pin a comment with a link to this video onto every existing video on this channel where I praised Gaiman's work. Much like I had to do with my pre-existing videos on Harry Potter when J.K. Rowling revealed her transphobia to the world. And going forward, it is my intention to not discuss his works or adaptations of his works on this or any other channel, nor to discuss any further allegations that come out. I think we'll only see further corroboration. I'm not going to tell you how to process or what steps to take. I am not going to tell you not to watch Sandman Season 2 or the movie-length wrap-up for Good Omens, assuming either of those still actually come out. I'm simply telling you that I will not discuss these things, because the man's work is not separate from the accounts of these women and what he did to them. The fame and the prestige he acquired through his written works was what granted him access to most of these women. And for me personally, it just feels kind of gross to praise or even examine that work. I personally am done with Neil Gaiman. And it is my explicit desire to not discuss him or his work in future. His work, which to be clear, was far more meaningful to me than Harry Potter ever was. That work has no place on this channel anymore. The man is a monster, and he is not welcome here. But you are. You are always welcome here, and I hope that you will continue to feel safe here. I want you to remember, as always, that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council, and I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.